Clay, welcome to another League of Legends video. This is going to be another episode in my replay analysis series, this time focusing on a Master Yi jungle gameplay. So thank you very much, Fuzzyhead, for sending this replay in for analysis. If you don't know what this series is, this is where I watch a replay sent in by one of you, the viewers, and in an effort to try provide some feedback, gameplay coaching, some commentary. The goal is to help you guys improve. And so hopefully that will help. Let's go ahead and this gentleman actually sent in some questions. And so let's go ahead and talk about some of those while we watch this opening jungle path. So what is the optimal way? I guess one of the things he talked about was that the early game didn't go quite so well. And so focusing kind of how can we clean up some of that early game. Consistently he's having problems getting behind early and then trying to catch up later. So let's go ahead and try and see if we can't help with some of those things. So first and foremost, I think part of it is realizing your champion choice that has a really big impact on the early game, specifically somebody like Master Yi. So part of it is just understanding the strategy that you've picked and the strengths and weaknesses that go alongside with it. So Master Yi is very much in the farm style of junglers. Just a little minor thing is I probably wouldn't take heal at level 2. I would probably take E because that's going to help increase your clear. I would say most junglers, and except for like Warwick, are going to need to go back to base once they get their buffs anyways. I realize that your heal is giving you some increased sustain, but it's making your clear a lot shorter, or a lot slower, I mean. So I guess I would maybe consider taking your E instead of your W at level 2, because now you're getting pretty low anyways. And so now Lee Sin comes to fight you, but you're pretty low. So it's... yeah, I probably would just base at this point. I guess we could maybe do another camp. But I think, taking heal at level 2 might be part of what is slowing you down in the early game, because it doesn't give you the combat stats. But anyways, back to what I was saying about your strategy. So picking Master Yi means you are very much going to be a farming. You're going to have this heavy farming playstyle. Oh, probably not going to get this. And so, yeah, I think part of the... yeah, it looks like you're going to die here. So... yeah, okay, so I want to finish my point here. So part of it is understanding your strategy, and when you pick somebody like Master Yi, that means that you don't really have any gank pressure. Master Yi is actually a pretty weak early jungler. He's somebody that just wants to power farm until he gets a lot of items. So you just have to understand that your champion choice is a part of what is making you weak early on, just because Master Yi doesn't really do very much early on. Unless you have red buff, you don't have any crowd control, you don't have ultimates, you don't have your big speed boost steroid. Also, you took teleport, which means that, again, you don't have a combat summoner. Teleport and smite leaves you without a combat summoner. So your playmaking potential early on is very limited. So that's kind of why with Lee Sin here, you kind of can get pushed around a little bit. So basically, when you pick somebody like Master Yi, you're pretty much forced into farming, and that's a playstyle that can be abused. So I'm not saying don't play Master Yi, I'm just saying understand the strengths and weaknesses of your champion choice, and understand that there are parts of your strategy that are contributing to maybe some of the problem that you're feeling. Also, I think that with this last little series right here, see, with that Shen, when you teleported back top, I actually want to back up and watch this one more time, because I think it was a pretty crucial moment. So let's go ahead and watch. So you went back to base, and you can see that the Shen got really low, and you decided to teleport in. I definitely think that this was fine. And then you kind of get bush juked right there. And so you do end up getting... so at this point, I think that he's gone. And I think that turning to run away, or... well, yeah, I don't know. This was just a little bit, maybe not the best decision to make, just because with Shen and Lee Sin, I think your kill pressure is pretty low. Also because Master Yi is such a weak champion early on, your kill pressure is really low. So I guess part of, I think what's getting you is just that the fact that Master Yi doesn't really offer very much at this stage of the game, and it's really kind of creating problems for you. So what is the best way to come back from a bad early game? Well, there's two things I guess you can do. One is to just kind of really buckle your head down and power farm, and that's kind of dependent on how much Lee Sin lets you do that. And then the other is to just say heck with it and just try and make a play somewhere, take a risk to do something to come back. So like forcing an early dragon or camping a specific lane, hoping that it can snowball, something like that is one way to do it. But I guess I would say that in this situation, it's probably best to just try and farm, which it look like is what you're doing. When you get behind in the jungle, it's rough because, you know, see right now Lee Sin can just come and fight you, and he's probably going to pick up another kill here. Yeah, see what's happening right now is Lee Sin's really just abusing his power over you. You know, he made some really strong plays just because, yeah, and he's going to get out of this probably. Because part of it is just because he's simply a stronger champion than you are, and he's got greater playmaking potential, he's got better mobility, he's got stronger stats early on, whereas Master Yi is like a very, very farm-intensive champion. Okay, so let's see here. Movement speed, attack damage, or lifesteal quints. I would probably go with attack speed on Master Yi. Attack speed is really, really good. For two reasons. One is he has an on-hit steroid on his E, so one of the ways to scale your basic attack deal bonus true damage on hit, and one of the ways to scale is to have more attack speed so that the steroid gets procced more frequently when it's up. Also, with his passive, he gets that double strike. I think it's every like 4th auto attack, so that means that attack speed gets that passive up more frequently. I think attack speed is really good on Master Yi. It's also going to help your early clears, which is the hardest, most difficult time. So it's kind of like you could get lifesteal, but you're going to clear more slowly, so you're going to take more damage, or you could just try to clear faster and take less damage that way. Yeah, this Lee Sin's making a lot of plays. Oh, he does actually end up going down there. Is Master Yi viable in the new jungle or better top or mid? I can't really... I mean, he's probably always going to be a decent jungler. I don't necessarily think that anything really changed. But I think that this game really shows some of his weaknesses. You know, specifically the Lee Sin has really been able to punish you. I realize this is on an older patch, but I still think that the basic idea is the same. So how do you continue to farm even when your team begins grouping? So that's another one of the weaknesses of Master Yi, is that he doesn't do quite as well in a 5-on-5 team fight as he does in a big, in like a 1v1 skirmish in a side lane. So if you're going to play Master Yi jungle, especially with teleport, you're probably going to want to look to split push pretty heavily. So again, part of that comes back to your strategy choice, and I think that the big thing is that... So one of the big things that's going on here is that you were really heavily punished on the weaknesses of your strategy in the early game. So Master Yi is like a very farm-intensive champion, doesn't really do that well and early on, whereas Lee Sin just came and invaded you, and he ganked and did a lot of good things across the map, whereas you weren't really able to match that. So Lee Sin was really capitalizing on his strengths, which is really pressing on your weaknesses. So I think that the biggest thing for you would be try to really find a way to minimize those weaknesses that you have, and really try to make sure that you can... See, this is a good gank. Really try and, instead of you know, capitalizing on your weaknesses, you want to really highlight your strengths. So this was good. I think this was a really nice play. Oh... Nice, very well played right there. Good use of your Alpha Strike to try to make plays. Master Yi's Alpha Strike is actually one of his best playmaking tools. That was a really nice job right there, getting executed. That little series right there was very well played. So that was a nice job. Another thing is understanding the way that your build is impacting. So going for the Wriggles and the Spirit Stone. Now again, I realize, I'm sorry guys, I know this is a little bit older and that these items are no longer in the game. But I still think that the basic analysis is still useful. So when you invest in these items, these are farming items. So it's kind of the same idea as if you had have gotten like a Tear of the Goddess or an Avarice Blade. These are items that do not give you any power in the moment, but then the hope is that they pay off for themselves in the long run. In this instance, it's with farming. So these items would let Master Yi just like permanently clear the jungle because he's getting so much sustain. That's the basic idea. So, you know, I think that your strategy is so heavily focused on farming and on late game that it left your early game very weak. I don't actually know. Okay, it doesn't look like you have any lifesteal. I can't actually tell what your runes and masteries were. But from just your itemization choice and your teleport, summoner spell, pretty much everything that you've gone for. Nice. Okay, so that was really good. Almost everything you've gone for has really put a focus on the late game. So when you're having troubles with the early game, part of it is because your strategy is so focused on late game that you don't have a lot of playmaking potential early on. And so, yeah, I think that part of it is to just, if you're going to go with such a heavily late game focused strategy, you have to realize that there are going to be games where things go poorly early, and it's going to mean that you are going to be behind. So it's a gamble of sorts. There are things that are beyond your control. If the Lee Sin invades you, there's not a lot that can be done about that. You just don't have a lot of options because your strategy kind of limited you. Now, there are maybe some things that you can do. I think that perhaps one of the things you could have done a little bit better is to try and get a ward up. So if you're playing against a jungler like Lee Sin, this is not really current, but talking back to the very earliest part, he kind of Lee Sin invaded in this area, and then he went up and ganked successfully, and he kind of pushed you out of your own jungle. Getting some wards up is really crucial. So putting your trinket ward in this area, or asking one of your laners to put a ward down in this area, or just having some way to gain vision of Lee Sin is really powerful to try and kind of counter what he's trying to do. So part of that is if you see that there's a Lee Sin jungle on the enemy team, you maybe want to just play extra cautious and understand that he's very likely to try and invade, because that's what Lee Sin is really good at. So even though your strategy is so heavily focused on the late game, if you ward properly, and also maybe with that first teleport that really set you behind, part of that is maybe to just understand that Master Yi isn't very strong early on, and so using my teleport early to try to pick up a kill before I'm level 6 into kind of what was a 1v2 situation, although the Shen was really low, he ended up just kind of baiting you. I think that overall, maybe that, just in hindsight, and just looking at the way it turned out, to think, that didn't really work very well. If I'm going to pick a champion that is weak early, I'm going to avoid picking fights early. I'm going to avoid fighting and just try to play the PvE game for a while. So if you ward up your jungle really heavily, that means that you can see where Lee Sin is and avoid him so he doesn't get the jump on you. Pretty good use of your abilities right there to get out of that. So I think that you've done a nice job of actually showing decent mastery of just Master Yi as a champion. Using your Alpha Strike to dodge things and your W to mitigate damage. Those are really the playmaking tools that Master Yi has. And then as the game goes on, I would really like you to try and look to find 1v1s. Because Master Yi is so good in a 1v1 situation. But where Master Yi is really bad is in like a 5v5. Because then a champion like Thresh can just lock you down. And there's not a lot that you can do about it. Nice. This should be a kill. Nice. That was well played. And then also understand that Master Yi is not the best ganking champion, but he's one of the best counter ganking champions in the game. Counter ganking is, I think, something that is a little bit of a fine art, because counter ganking really just means that you can understand what the enemy jungler is likely to do, and you can kind of predict where you think he's going to be, and use that information to so the moment that they jump out and they use their cooldowns, it leaves them vulnerable, and so you can kind of capitalize on that and swoop in and clean things up. You know, so if Shen and Lee Sin commit really hard on your Xin Zhao, the counter ganking is really important. And so looking back at the very first gank you had, you were just a little bit late on that counter gank, and so it didn't end up working very well because the gank was already pretty much over. And here's an interesting question that you had. It says, do you consider queuing with others? As in, would you ever consider playing? So, I maybe would, but I think that one of the things is that I think that that it's better to watch a replay than it is to help somebody in a live gameplay setting, because basically I think my thought process there is that a live gameplay is going to kind of bring in all these other factors, like sometimes people get nervous, or like this sounds really like kind of weird and conceited, but like they're like really pumped to play with a YouTuber, or they're like impressed, and so they get kind of nervous. And then you're not, like, that's not necessarily going to help you, because you aren't going to play your solo queue games like that. And so, yeah, I guess I think it's more beneficial for you to have me watch a replay than to necessarily play with you live. I like the decision making here. Another thing to consider too is whether or not you think that duo queuing helps you. Duo queuing is an interesting topic. I think that, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that you said that you were duo queued with this gameplay. And I think that in general, there are actually some pretty good reasons to avoid duo queuing with somebody in ranked. And I'll try to explain that why right now. And I think that most of it has to do with the fact that when you duo queue with someone, unless you are very equal in terms of you're on the same page on skill, you're on the same page in like the drive and desire to play and the will to win. You know, some players play the game more casually, some players play it more competitively, so you want to be on the same page in that regard. And if you aren't, then it can really kind of imbalance things. So just specifically with MMR, if you are playing with somebody who's got higher MMR than you, it can actually be a problem, because it means that you're going to get matched up against players that are higher. I don't exactly know how they do it, but I just kind of, from my experiences with duo queuing, is that Riot will say that because you're duo queuing, that gives you a little bit of a strategic advantage, and therefore it is fair to match you up against players of a little bit higher caliber. So if typically you're against players in like the silver, low silver range, and you're duo queuing with somebody in gold, then your duo queue games are probably going to be against more people in the gold region instead of the silver region, if that makes sense. So it doesn't necessarily split the difference in half. It more will prefer the higher rank, because Riot gives you a little bit of a preference for having that strategic advantage because you're duo queued together. But I also think that, so if you want to just purely win games, I think that playing by yourself is probably the best way to do it. But I have duo queued quite a bit in the past with a friend of mine, just simply because I really enjoy playing with him, and we aren't necessarily all about, hey, we have to win. So on that regard, we're on the same page in terms of like how much competition we're looking for in League of Legends. So that's kind of one reason why our duo queue has been a good experience. But if you aren't on as much of the same page, I think it could probably be a little messy. You know, then you could get into that awkward space where like you're a little bit more tryhard than they are, and you kind of get a little frustrated when they are playing a little. And you don't want that. Like that's not what you want. Okay, so I like that you're going to Soul of the Dragon. I think you've done a pretty nice job of trying to recover from some of that weak early game. You know, if we think back. Oh, nice. Okay, so you got that. I would definitely just try to kill this guy. Nice. So let's think back to, because I think from here on out, you're probably just going to get more and more fed, and I think you've got it showing a pretty good understanding. Let's reflect a little bit on that early game though, while you just continue to power farm. So I think your route was fine, and you got to your red buff, and that's where we saw the Lee Sin, right? And he kind of pushed you out of your jungle, and you were really low. So that was fine. Like like I said before, that's a part of your strategy. Playing Master Yi, going for the Mad Stone, you know, going for a very late game oriented build means that you don't really have a lot of power early on. So I think the best thing to do there is to just say, you know what, I'm not going to fight you, and if you see the Lee Sin, to just avoid him. So I think that was fine. Then I think one of the things that got you in a little bit of trouble though was that first teleport up top. And so I think the biggest feedback there is to just, again, understand that going for that 1v2, I know that the Shen was really low, but, you know, so you went after the Shen, you got bush juked, and then you kind of chased him this area. I think that decision started out a little bit meh. Like, the decision to teleport in was okay, but then when you continue to chase, you had already used your Q, you don't have flash because you took teleport. When the Shen shadow dashed through you and gained the distance, he's probably gone. And so I think quickly to identify that he's gone and to run back to safety would have been a little bit of the better choice. And then also to avoid picking the fight with Lee Sin, because Lee Sin is a stronger champion than you early on. I think that those couple of things could have prevented you from getting behind in the early game and prevented Lee Sin from getting so far ahead, and maybe could have led to a little bit better situation. A little bit of a team fight here I want to go ahead and watch. So it looks like the fight has already broken out. You're doing this well from the fact that you... Okay, that was good. I think this fight was probably over before it started, but you are playing it pretty much correctly, just because, you know, Master Yi, you kind of want to think of him as an assassin. You want to be... So you don't want to be the person that initiates the front line of the fight, you want to be the person that is coming in to clean up. So like what you're doing right now is perfectly good. That you let the Xin Zhao go in front, and then you are just there to clean up in terms of damage. Probably wouldn't spend too much time trying to chase this down, but this almost worked out. I think one of the things that some of the lower players, this sounds terrible, but one of the differences that I noticed between lower elo and high elo, like especially a lot of the very high elo streams, is that in high elo players don't chase almost at all, but in low elo it's like players are really strong on chasing. You know, they see that somebody gets low, and especially like a Lee Sin, he's so slippery, like, and what is the, you know, he's 6 and 7. There really isn't that much to be gained by going after him. I think that, you know, to be really quick to identify that, you know, this is not a chase we need to take, maybe could have really benefited you in that situation. But good job picking up that Baron. Maybe it was a little bit risky just because you didn't quite have as much vision as you could have had. And then this is exactly where you want to be on Master Yi, is pushing out these huge side blades like this. One thing you haven't done quite a ton of is split pushing. If I were you, I would probably quit farming the jungle and just split push. Like, you are pretty far and away the strongest champion in the game right now. And I think that continuing to power farm the jungle is a little bit unnecessary. And if you start split pushing, I think that you can put a lot more pressure on the map. And you have teleport, so the best use of teleport is through split pushing. I like the Last Whisperer choice here, just looking at the Shen and the Lee Sin. So you've got a lot of armor pen, which is really, really nice. Yeah, I would definitely think that looking to split push is what I would go for, at least me personally. I would look to go and split push a side lane. And so, just to cover a little bit of the basics of split pushing, if you don't know, so split pushing means that, especially because Baron is down, you could pick either top or bottom, and then you want your allies to group together as a group of 4. So you've got this 4-man squad, and then you are the split pusher. And the idea is that you put the enemy team in the Malachi Crunch, or you put them between a rock and a hard place. And so there really is no good option for them, because they can't, if they send one person against you, that won't work, because you are strong enough to 1v1 anybody on their team. And then if they send 2 people to deal with you, because you're so strong that you can beat anyone in a 1v1. If they send 2 people, that means that it is a 4 versus 3 with your other squad. And so that's a really good situation as well, because they should be able to win the 4v3. And then the last thing is that they don't send anybody, because they're so dejected, because you have 12 kills that nobody wants to go fight you. And then you just take all the towers and you tell your teammates to disengage. You know, they've got Soraka and Xin Zhao and Orianna. You tell them to do whatever they can to just wave clear and defend the tower, not fight, whatever they can to just stay alive and stall while you take all the towers. So that's really the basics of split pushing, is that you've got those 3 situations, and no matter what, there is a place where your team has an advantage. In the pure 1v1, you're going to win. In the 2v1, you have a 4v3 on the other side of the map that your team should hopefully be able to win. And then if they don't send anybody, your group of 4 would hopefully just be able to defend and wave clear and disengage from the group of 5. And especially with someone like a Master Yi, and especially with the build that you've gone for with the Blade of the Ruined King and the Youmuu's Ghostblade, these 2 items are some of the best 1v1 duel items in the game. So I would look to split push. And split pushing is just a nice way, too, in the later stages of the game to try and advance the game. Looks like you're going to probably just... So part of it is that you guys are just so strong that you can just dive them. But diving is actually a pretty risky way to try and end the game, because you have to deal with tower aggro, and like I know that you were like just 1v5ing. And this is the PowerPoint. So like, you know how I talked about your strategy, that it has weaknesses early on? This is the Penta. Yep, nice. Good job. So this game ended up going really well, but that early game, I think, if you can understand what your strategy offers, understand the strengths and weaknesses, that the weaknesses being that Master Yi is a very weak champion early on. He doesn't gank very well. He really needs levels and items to be effective. And so, you know, with good warding and with just you doing whatever you can to avoid taking fights or making risky plays is probably going to be the best choice. I think you could have avoided a lot of those early problems. But you did a nice job coming back in the late game, which is the time where Master Yi is really strong. So maybe just a little bit better understanding your strategy, you know, trying to do what you can to shore up its weaknesses, but also in the same time highlight its strengths, not taking any risks early on when you're not very powerful. But yeah, overall I think there was a nice gameplay. Maybe consider doing some split pushing if you're having troubles in the late game. I think especially as you get a little bit higher and people start to teamfight a little better. You know, because Master Yi really... Like, there are ways that you can deal with him. Specifically, a champion like Thresh has a lot of ways to deal with Master Yi. If he throws down a well-timed exhaust, plus Flay, plus Hook, you're just going to die. There's just nothing else to it. Pretty much any support. You know, Syndra could stun, Shen could taunt, Caitlyn could use her traps, Lee Sin could kick you away. You know, with all these crowd controls, they have ways that they can deal with you, but I think that usually at some of these lower elos, people just don't really know how to deal with him. So finding other alternatives and having other ways to advance the game through split pushing, then you can avoid some of those weaknesses and again abuse your strengths, which is as a 1v1 duelist. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was on an older patch, but I still believe that there was some really good things to take away here. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.